Welcome back to part 2 of ex11, working with Express, and we're going to do some validation and start working with templates. Now, what we want to do next, instead of just getting a result that says, thanks for answering, we want to be able to validate what we put in there in our input text. And we can use an if-else statement. But before we do that, we have to use something called middleware. Now, Brad will explain what middleware is, but if you just do a search, we're going to put something up here after our variable here, and even if you do a search and just type in app.use express URL encoded, and we're going to actually use extended false, but if you just search for that, you're going to find this middleware express function, and the first one that came up here is Geeks for Geeks, and if you ever use that site, they have it right here. So we're going to use this URL encoded. So let's just use this. So let's just go app.use, and we're going to use something called express.url encoded with parentheses, and then they will have their own parentheses in there, and inside this URL encoded you can see it's coming up extended true. We're going to use extended false, but I'm just going to hit tab here and I'll change this to false. And again, this is middleware, and I can't really explain a whole lot what middleware is other than it's allowing us to parse the body of what's coming in here in the post content. So that's what it should look like. And if you just search for that, you'll find something like that. It's a very kind of, he describes it as boilerplate kind of Express language. So if you look in Express, you'll find that URL encoded is the main method that we're going to use here. So that's going to help us actually use like if-else statements in here. So where we're going to do that is down here. So we're going to go down to our results instead of just thanks for answering. And we can just leave one of these in here for now and maybe make this first response being like that is correct. So we'll still have a response in there. That is correct. We'll give an exclamation point. But then before here, we'll go here and we'll do an if statement. So we'll do if and then parentheses, regular JavaScript, and we'll put our stuff into curly braces. So I'll copy that and put this after this one. And what we'll do is we'll say if request, and they use something .body, because it's the body of the post request, and we're going to use the name, and the name we're using up here is framework. So if the request from the body of the name framework, and we'll say equals equals, and in quotes we'll just say express, and we'll change that so it could be capital, or if it has spaces in it, anything like that. So right now if that's the response, it's going to say that is correct. And then we can do an else after here. It should be after here. We'll do an else. And we could move else up here and put a space there. So we have our if and we have our else. And then we'll just copy this again. Now, I don't have this indented really nice. Instead of that is correct, that is not correct. Or that is wrong. How about just, that'll be easier to notice it. We'll just put that is wrong. Or how about this? How about correct and then wrong? Then there'll be no question about that. So we don't need, I don't think we need semicolons in here until the very end. And I could move that over too. So again, just a basic JavaScript if-else statement, but we're using this request equals body. So this wasn't being used yet, so now it should be used as long as we're using the post one and not the get one here. And now he uses 3 equal signs here. I don't know if we need them. That usually means it has to be the same type as well, meaning it has to be a string. I guess we could put that in, or we could just leave it at 2 and see how it works for now. Now let's see if this works before we do anything else. So I'm just going to stop. I'm going to run, and I'll type it correctly first, and then we'll see what happens if we don't. So I'll go here, refresh it, and I have to go back to this part. What framework are we learning? Correct. So that worked. And let me go back, refresh it, and I'll just put Flask or something. Wrong. So it's working. Things working here. So it's taking the information. Again, we're not necessarily working with a database server or anything yet. We're just trying to get requests back and forth. And again, we're starting simple here, and we're just learning about Express doing that. So Express can set up templates for us. We can use JavaScript in here. And again, that's why people like using JavaScript for this. All this back-end server stuff is not very easy to work with. And a lot of times it's just looking through documentation, finding things. I wouldn't expect you to know this URL encoded. That's by going through Express. If you're going to use Express, you're going to look that stuff up and you're going to get more familiar with it. But a lot of people like staying with something. If they know JavaScript, they can use JavaScript in here instead of, suddenly if they haven't used Python before, suddenly they're using Python or they're using something else, or PHP, which is even completely different with all the dollar signs and everything like that. So it's a way to use JavaScript in some of these frameworks, even though the frameworks are not familiar, they're not easy to work with, and they're not something that feels as normal as doing front-end development. But so far, we have some responses coming back from our form, and they're working. So we're validating this a little bit with an if-else statement. Now, what we're going to do next, we're going to skip over all the middleware stuff that Brad goes over in his video. That's not going to help us right now. What we're going to do is actually just set up our templating engine. Now, that's what we did in Flask, where we had the templates folder, and then we were able to kind of set up regular HTML. So we don't have to use this stuff. So we don't have to use backticks and put a bunch of HTML inside an index.js. We can actually create an actual file that we can work with. So what we're going to do is use something called this. Now, he recommends this. There's different types that do this, different packages for Node, but he recommends this being the easiest. And if you look at some of these things here, look at that. Less than %sign, so it's kind of like that Jinja 2 that we're using with Flask. And again, I'm not bringing this up because I think this stuff is easy or I can make it easy for you, but this is just what we're dealing with on backend. So that's why we're just taking a little taste of it. But this is the templating engine so that we can create pages. So this is how we install it, npm install EJS. So you can install it in your shell. So if you go over here, in your shell part, and again, if you don't have your shell, just hit plus and do shell. It's not the console, it's after this root user that you have here, and you're just going to put in npm install space, and then it's going to be EJS. And npm, again, is the Node package manager, so EJS is part of that, so we're just going to hit enter. And you'll see it getting installed. And then you still have to bring it in, 2 packages. Now, to use this package, and I'll just show you his video right here, we're going to use these lines here, app.set, view engine, EJS, and then we're going to set it up so it goes to that particular path, and he's going to make a folder called views. He calls it views. We could call it templates since that's consistent with what we did with Flask, so maybe we'll just call it templates. So in either order that we do it, you could go back in here and you can make a new folder right here, and I'll just call it templates, just because we did that before. Even though he's calling it views, we'll call it templates. It could be anything you want, so templates, views, whatever, but that's going to be the name of our folder, and that may make more sense. And then when we go up here, after this app.use, we're going to use app.set, and it's view engine, and then comma EJS are the arguments for that set. So view engine, and then after the quote, another quote again, EJS. So that's bringing it in, and then we could put a semicolon here, and then we'll do app.set, and this is going to be pointing to this folder. So we'll do app.set, and it's already coming up here. He's using views. This is coming up. Let me call this templates, and let's just look at the code again. Templates, and then there's this path.join. Now, to use path.join, you have to use this path variable up here. So you have to put that in, require it. It's part of Node so that they can use this. And again, I'm not going to explain, even if I could, how that works, but that's basically going to allow us to use that path. So we'll put in, for our second argument, path.join, and then directory name with 2 underscores, and then views. This will be templates. So let's go and do that, see if we can get that line correct. So let me take this out first, and we'll do that path.join, and it's another parentheses, and then in there we'll use underscore underscore dir name, and then a comma, and then it's going to be templates. And let's just double check to make sure we have that correct. app.set, we're going to use our folder name. Instead of views, we're using templates, path.join, in parentheses, underscore, underscore, dir name, comma, and then views, we're using templates. So we're using that. And then we're going to have to, in order to use this path object here, we're going to use const path equals require path. So let's go up here. We'll do const path equals require, and I think it's in quotes, path. And I think that's all we should need there. We'll put a semicolon. And then what we'll do is we'll make a template file in here and we'll put this stuff in it. So we can go in here to templates and add a file, and he calls it home.ejs. Let's just do what he did, home.ejs. Because we're using the templating engine here. So we'll do home.ejs. Okay, and what we could do here is just put in our HTML code. So we'll go back here to our index. We'll take this out of here. We'll take all this code out of here. We could just cut it. It's going to mess up our... Well, let's just copy it right now. Let's just copy it and put it in here. And I think this will treat it as HTML. Let's see if we could just do tab. Now, this EJS file isn't allowing us to put in HTML in here. I'm not sure why, because he does it in his video. But for now, if you want to go around that, just rename it HTML. We'll go in here. That will allow us to do HTML. And we can just rename it EJS, since we have to have that. But just for now, so that we can make our code easy, we can do exclamation point, tab, and then put that in there. And then in our body, we can go in here and paste that H1. Maybe I'll make it like an H2 so it's not as big. What framework are we learning? So we have that information in there. We can get rid of any backticks that we have. We can tab stuff in nicely so it looks better. So our HTML could be in here, and we could even put something here like an H1 and just put homepage, just so we know that's our homepage. And then we'll have an H2, and then we'll have this form that'll be in here, and we'll start building these templates here. We also have to, I think, render them like we did before. But after we do this, for now, let's just go back and rename it. Now, this isn't part of the normal process. I'm just doing it so we can generate this HTML a lot easier. He was able to use it in his video. I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because it has to be views. He said you could name it anything, so I named it templates, but it wasn't using HTML5 in here when we named it. But that could be a Replit thing as well. So let's just rename, and let's call this EJS. Now, you're going to get this because this tab's open. If you just close it and open it up again, now it looks okay. I'm just curious, once we have this H2 tab, no, it's not working. So our Emmet is not working, our shortcuts are not working, even though it looks like HTML in here. So we're going to go back to our index page, and we're going to change this. And what we'll do here is get rid of this whole thing that's in here, this res.send, and we'll get rid of the backticks and make sure everything looks nice and clean in here. Because remember, there's two functions in here. There's the app.get, and then this is inside here. So we're going to do something called res.render. And remember, we did something like that in Flask to basically render our template. I think it was render underscore template, something like that. And then in here, we'll just put home. Now, you don't have to put home.ejs, even though it wants that to be EJS. So I'm not sure if it'd work if that was HTML or not, but we're going to keep that EJS since we're using that right now. And if there's any problem, you could always refresh this, like refresh or repel. Like you could just stop, go here, refresh this page, and kind of start it up again. And again, it's not showing HTML here, so it's not allowing us to do HTML. And we'll just put, home up here, since that's what we're doing, so when it shows up, it looks somewhat normal. And let's see if it works. Let's run it. It looks like it's updating some of our installs. That's okay. And let's go here. Let's refresh this. Or let's go back to home. And refresh it. And I'm getting an internal error. That could either be me or Replit, but I don't think I did anything wrong here. So let me just look at this again, make sure all my code's okay. Okay, after dealing with some errors after the better part of an afternoon, I have some fixes here. And I'm not sure if I could even explain everything, but one of them I do understand. is in our index.js, when I said you could name this templates, you can. You don't have to call it views, but it's originally looking for views. That's why this should be views. That should be views. So this first one in this app set should be views, but then you're telling it that the directory name is templates. But this has to say views. So that was one problem I was having. Another problem I was having was for some reason, in my package.json file, if you go in there, get rid of this thing. Type module was giving me problems. So I found out if I get rid of it, it seems to work okay. Just get rid of it. You can just leave it blank like that. Make sure there's a comma before it goes on to the next one, the main index.js. Because it was telling me to change it to common.js and all kinds of stuff, and it just seems to work fine when I get rid of it. So I'm going to get rid of that. And the last thing, I think, I'm going to close this up. This seems to work better by using const express equals require express instead of import. Now let me just try it. Let me make sure this works first, and then I'll go back just to troubleshoot. So I'm going to stop this. And I'll run it again. And it appears to be working. If I open this in a new tab, I'll get rid of my other one and type in express. And now we can do more with express. And it's working. But if I do this, if I do it the way I had this, because that's the way the template was originally. And I guess it has to do with the way it's importing in Express and the fact that we're working in Replit. But if I have import Express equals Express, now watch this time it'll work, but I think it was import Express from Express. And this was in quotes. I think that's what it was initially. So we had to use that. And for some reason, I think that gives me a problem. Now let's see. Let's stop this. Now if it works, then we're good. But let's try it out. Yeah, I'm getting a problem. And I'm not sure why, but some of the other guys that I follow use this approach, including Brad uses const equals require and then express, and in quotes. For some reason, that seems to work, setting it as a constant. And it has to do with the way this is installed, maybe because I'm in Replit and they're doing it on their hard drive, whatever. I've saw two other people and they had this, and it seemed to be working, and I almost gave up on it, but I kept working through it. And this was one that was really hard to find because it was really hard to know that it originally looks for views. Even though this is different, but I did see something that was different at one time. Okay, so let's just try it one more time. Let's just stop it. Let's run it, and it seems to be working. So a couple things just to be aware of, that we want to use this, const express equals require express. We'll change that from what was originally there. Instead of using the import, it seems to work better. And down here, no matter what we call our directory, we still have to call this part views when we're using this path object here to indicate the directory name that we're going to, even though it's normally looking for that. So I guess that's where we're kind of telling it to go to something else. Even if it's the same name, even if it's /views, we would still have to do views there. And then also in the package.json file, just get rid of that thing that says type module. That seemed to create a problem. And I was asking ChatGPT, all these kinds of things, I couldn't figure it out. And finally it was just narrowed it down. So anyway, that's all you have to do for that right now. Just get that working. We may keep going with this, but for now, that's the first part of ex11. So I'll let you know if there's more coming, or if I come up with something else to do. So you could just copy this, put this in for ex11 for unit 11 for now, and just make sure it works so that it's bringing up this page. We may continue this with these templates just a little bit more, but for now we got one template page kind of working where we're actually putting in HTML in here. And for some reason we're using this EJS and it's not giving us HTML shortcuts. It looks like HTML, it's colorized like HTML, but it's not letting us type HTML like we usually do. So if we change it to HTML first, do some HTML, and then go back, rename it to EJS, that seems to work. So that's ex11 for now.